So good evening, everyone. As Jess mentioned, my name's Remy Rippon. I'm the Senior Health and Beauty Editor at Vogue Australia, and we are here to chat Reinventing Beauty, Australia's place in the beauty industry. It's not a small topic.
It's the most exciting topic.
Yeah, we've got the fun one tonight. So I'm joined by Natasja and Sasha. So I think just to kick things off, could you just explain to us in your own words what your role is and the companies and places the companies that you work for?
Yes, definitely. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet all of you. I'm Natasja, the founder and CEO of Conserving Beauty. So we are a skincare brand, but we are oh so much more than that. We create solutions. We create things that are amazing for your skin, but equally amazing for the planet. And you can find our amazing dissolving skincare technology both online at Mecca and in London at Space NK, and soon lots and lots of other places.
Mm-hmm. And Sasha, explain a bit about your work and the platforms that you've built.
Yeah, so my journey started 12 years ago, so being the editor and founder of Ascension Magazine, which ultimately was Australia's first digital lifestyle platform for women of colour. And that came about from me not seeing a reflection of myself. And I found it really frustrating because I was importing magazines from the US and the UK just to see a reflection of myself. And so we built a philosophy, aspire, inspire, desire, and we wanted it to be uplifting because a lot of the narratives that were happening in mainstream media about women of colour were quite derogatory or negative or didn't reflect the true essence and beauty and the reflection of the community and how women of colour ultimately wanted to see themselves. And I've since kind of pivoted in different areas of interrogating beauty through filmmaking and public speaking and
She's
book.
a TED Talk queen. Don't say so.
So on that note, you're obviously a writer and filmmaker, and if anyone has 10 minutes, please go and see Sasha's TED Talk. It's about decolonising beauty. It's incredible. And you did it during COVID, wasn't it? So you didn't have the full crowd.
No, I wanted to be in the Opera House because I'm so vain, but I think it was a very important time because we were in lockdown. So to actually be released, but to impart an important message, not just about decolonising beauty, but seeing the beauty within humanity, and I think we really needed that at the time, so it was such a blessing to be able to do that.
So how has your work influenced the conversation around beauty standards, particularly within Australia and for First Nations women?
Yeah, so it gave me and women of colour an opportunity to interrogate beauty. So we realised that beauty wasn't monolithic and it wasn't relegated to just a Western standard of beauty. And through the pages of Ascension, we were able to have these conversations, and it even got back to me interrogating beauty on my personal terms of I was always trying to aspire to a Western standard of beauty, but realising that if I went back to my cultural roots, in fact, that we had a lot of ancient traditions and rituals and beauty ceremonies that we held within the culture and how beautiful that was. And so it gave me the opportunity to have these conversations, not only in my family, but the wider community. So you look at beautiful moku, traditional Melanesian tattooing, and how it can often seem masculine, but it's actually a feminine matriarchal tradition. So the beauty in that. So that was amazing to look at beauty in a whole different light and bring a lot of people that have been excluded from the conversation centre stage.
It's such important work that you've been doing for the last 10 years and will continue to do. Natasja, talk to me about waterless beauty, because this is really, it's products we haven't seen before. I was watching some of your Instagram earlier today and you were saying we are literally like creating machines because they don't exist create the products that you're trying to create. So can you tell us about how did you fall into that work?
I'd love to. So I started my journey studying science at university. So I have a Bachelor of Biochemistry, and then I've been working in the beauty industry for almost 10 years. But my working in the beauty industry sounds very glamorous. It wasn't. I worked in supply chain, operations, product development, basically everything except for the cool, fun marketing stuff that I now get to dip my toe into, owning a business. But I think because I put all that time into all of those boring areas and I learned so much about building a product, I was so excited to really try and create something innovative. I think we were talking about it earlier. There's not there's not a beauty product that doesn't necessarily exist. It's more that you would find a new or unique way of formatting it so that it would be different, because there's a million moisturizers, a million cleansers, but does your cleanser dissolve after use? I mean, ours does. But that was kind of how I started my moment. And when I was thinking about creating a beauty brand, I wasn't like, I'm going to create a brand and it's going to be this name and it's going to look like this. It did not start like that. I started off going, what's a problem that the beauty industry faces? Well, I can tell you from manufacturing, we have an exorbitant amount of water footprint. We use thousands and thousands of litres to create our products. Our products are also filled with water, and we are living in a global water crisis, and it's not talked about as much as it should be. So that's the first step. Then I think the one that people really understand is carbon footprint. We create a lot of carbon emissions and shipping our products and during manufacturing, and that needs to be maintained and reduced, and it's not about offsetting and don't get me, actually, we won't even go down that rabbit hole, but that's a really important pillar. And then there's the end of life cycle use and the waste that our beauty products have created, and how can we avoid that instead of trying to create refill systems that nobody wants to use, or product systems that you have to send it back somewhere that, let's be real, no one's going to do it. What's a format that it can actually end in your home, whether it dissolves or the packaging composts in your compost bin. So they were kind of the pillars that I would think about. And then I was like, right, it makes sense. My products are going to be waterless. They're going to have a really responsible water footprint. And no, I'm not just going to make a lofty green claim. I'm going to actually invest my time and money and go and do a research project to validate those claims, which we've done. So we manage our water footprint, our carbon footprint, our waste footprint. And then we invested in our own technology and our manufacturing equipment, which is very bizarre and very unique for a beauty brand, to create our fabric that dissolves. So we've got a fabric and it completely disappears in 60 seconds.
It's quite like magic.
It's literally a magic trick, yes. Yeah. And we infuse that fabric with ingredients, and we create things like makeup wipes and sheet masks. And now we have a different dissolving technology for our version of a pimple patch. So the idea is that you get to use these amazing products that you're already using, but it can align with your values. It can be more ethical, and you're lessening your impact on the planet. And yeah, we're really excited. I mean, we're the first beauty brand in the world to have environmental impact funds as investors, which I think speaks a lot to our credibility. We've got other investors too, but they're the cool ones. And yeah, it's been an amazing journey. So I'm really excited to be talking to so many people that are about to start their career.
Well, on
hopefully
that
in beauty or STEM.
Yes, if they're starting,
Fashion, anything else.
Did it take a lot of convincing at the start? Because if you're trying to explain to someone something that doesn't exist at all, did that take
everyone will laugh at you.
Yeah.
But that's usual. I think there were days of tears. My husband will laugh. I'm like, it's fine. But I think when you're trying to do something different, you'll get more no's than yeses, and that's okay. I think being super resilient is the most important thing, you would probably agree, in business, in any job, even if you're not starting a brand, because you're going to get more no's than yeses, but all it takes is one good yes. It's like getting into Mecca. People told me it would never happen. Well, it did, and I did that a year before I launched. I mean, I just think the perseverance ends up making it happen. But also, this was 10 years in the making, and I worked on it for 2 years before we even launched, and now we're 2 years later. So
yeah.
And we've got a long way to go.
And look at you now.
I'm at Vogue Codes.
I guess you're both also driven by this desire to change things from the way that they were. You're both uncharted territory. So how are you starting to see the impact of that work, Sasha?
I see it through technology and innovation, because it's opened up the conversation on a global level where people can, as I was saying before, interrogate beauty, but reinsert them and redefine it for themselves. So I saw that, with the launch of Ascension, but the rise of social media and influencers, they just changed the game where brands were approaching them. It wasn't back in the day where it was all about the celebrities and the models that were getting the big brand deals. It was your everyday person who was unique. They had creativity. You just admired them because they reflected someone that you could relate to, which was so personable. So that's how I see it. And also with the conversation being global as well, I think a lot of the things that shifted pretty much from my point of view as a Black woman or a First Nations woman is the social and political issues that we've experienced with Black Lives Matter and COVID. So shifting our business models, being more online, more tax savvy about that. What does it look like when we're housed inside? Can we still consume our products and services in a way that still makes us feel like we're connected to the things that we love, beauty and fashion? But also with that as well, with Black Lives Matter, it really opened up a conversation of, do we have diversity and inclusion in our brand practices, in the reflection of our advertising and marketing, and does that brand story have an inclusive story? So I think with the change of the way that we operate in the world with tech and innovation, it's made us more conscious, and also the consumers as well. They're asking the hard questions. We're refining our business practices and going, what do I stand for? What is my legacy? Because we're shifting the business models and bringing other people into the conversation, where it was just, we tell you what's the trend and what's beautiful.
I think representation and sustainability are probably the two biggest conversations in the beauty industry at the moment. What are the, sustainable practices? You mentioned Borderless, but it goes from start to finish. What are those within conserving beauty?
I mean, you can't really do anything in sustainability and beauty products if you don't have a traceable supply chain. I always say that it starts there, because the problem is a lot of brands don't necessarily have visibility of where their ingredients come from. Their contract manufacturer, they're the people who make the products, they hold a lot of that knowledge, which is really difficult, because I think we've seen this rise of brands that they're like, okay, we know sustainability is important, we want to be a part of it, but they don't necessarily know where to start. And understandably so. If you don't have visibility, you can't really measure or reduce or make changes. So I think for us, first and foremost, everything is traceable in our supply chain to the nth degree. And that's how we've been able to run our own research projects to actually measure our footprint, whether that's our water footprint, carbon footprint, waste footprint, and then work on tactics to reduce it. Because, we're not perfect. We're in consumerism. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like we're not in consumerism. We're in consumerism, but we're trying to make it in the best way possible, and we'll always continuously be looking at our supply chain and looking at ways to innovate to lessen our impact overall. But yeah, and also local manufacturing is everything. I'm a really big believer in that. So we manufacture everything in Australia. But as we grow, and this is a conversation I'm having at the moment with some of my board members, is as we grow, does it make sense to always manufacture in Australia, or do we need to have local supply chains? Because then we're further reducing our impact and, supporting those communities as well. So anyway, it's a continual conversation.
Didn't you mention before that someone said you can't start a company because you're not a marketer?
Yes.
You're doing a very good job at marketing your brand.
I was going to say thank you. He actually told me, not only should I not start my company, I'm not a marketer, I need a co-founder because I'm not enough on my own. Lol. And then about 12 months later, he offered me a check, and I was laughing.
Oh, wow.
Too late, buddy.
Big mistake. Yeah. Sasha, how can the beauty industry, better incorporate and respect the cultural perspectives of First Nations people and women of colour?
So I guess I'll answer that question with some stats. So if you look at the Australian beauty industry, it's, I think, at $23 billion US. There's no stats on what First Nations and people of colour are included in that stat. And when you look at the native botanical and bush foods industry, it's 50 million per year. So it's projected to be, in 5 years, 250 million. But there's only 2% of Aboriginal landowners, people or communities or brands that are part of that market. So it's a very low number. So I guess it really puts it into perspective that how are we providing opportunities for First Nations beauty brands and communities who do want to care and protect for country, because a lot of those principles of native bush foods and botanicals is all part of our culture. So where is the opportunity for us to practice our culture, but also make an economic impact for our communities and generational wealth? So, I think this is a broader conversation that needs to be had, and it starts with everybody in this room who might aspire to be in the beauty industry. It's looking at, who are our staff member, who's on our advisory board, do we have local supply chains? And even you and I talked about, why you haven't approached that area, and it's because of such a small market. And then it's like, how do you build those relationships? So are there internships? Are there people going out to the communities and meeting with those landowners or those who are utilizing bush botanicals and that. So, that's
No, I
really
know.
important.
It was funny because we literally had this conversation earlier, and just sheer coincidence. So we don't use Australian native extracts in any of our products, which is quite unusual for an Australian beauty brand, given that everyone uses kakadu plum, wattle seed, etc. And the only reason we don't do that is because I haven't found a raw material supplier that is run and led by our First Nations people, and it feels unethical to profit up their knowledge. There's just no way that I could sit here and say that I care about sustainability in the planet and then have all these unethical suppliers. But you're absolutely right. There's so much opportunity, and how amazing would it be if there was an amazing supplier that was actually run by them, and how do we build that?
And this is exactly, what I would aspire to happen, is that these conversations are happening, because it, poses the question of how can I best work with you? What kind of products are you looking to create? And, looking at the journey that a brand can take. When you look at it, there is such a demand and a highlight on Australian beauty, or a beauty, however you want to call it, and also too the supply chain and how these products are made. And a part of that story, especially with Australian beauty, is the First People. So, it's an advantage for a lot of businesses and partnerships to start off with, embedding First Nations culture and the principle, because, you talk about clean beauty and seed to skin. We're all trying to get to the same point of having the best, purest product or ingredients that is for our optimum health, ultimately.
Well said.
Thank you, my dear.
To both of you, but maybe starting with you, Sasha, what are your hopes for the beauty industry? It's a big one.
Well, I think it really covers everything that I said. And, my hopes is that, we're able to, so for example, I'm so obsessed with this brand, it's 4-5 Skin. And so what I hope is that people of colour or women of colour have their own scientific labs. So 4-5 Skin produce their own scientific lab, purely because there was only 1.5 to 2% of clinical trials that tested on melanin skin. So I want to see more of these types of practices happening, where businesses decide, okay, look, I don't find a product, I don't want to use the ingredients that are just a standard formulation. I want to go back to my motherland and work with the women who are at disadvantage and bring economic opportunities for them. And I want to be able to empower them in this process and build a diversity of skin is not universal, and there's no beauty is everyone else's business. It's your business and it's not everybody else's business. So if we aspire to get to that point where there's such a plethora of opportunities and bespoke experiences in the beauty industry, that's what I would ultimately love, and it would bring people like me more into the playing field of enjoying something that I think we all have experienced, like being that we were talking about being that young little girl looking up to our mothers and our aunties going, oh my God, I want to get that mulberry lipstick because it's popping and I want to be so powerful, just like my mother.
And Natasja?
I would love for the beauty industry to be accountable, and I say that in the nicest way possible. I think as a consumer who's then stepped into now being a part of the industry in a business, I would love to be able for people to buy products and all the claims that are made on pack, whether it be about skin promises or sustainability or whatever it is, be legit and factual, which I feel like it's a bit of a cowboys situation at the moment. And I would also equally love for people down the track in 10 years to say, oh my gosh, what do you mean your makeup wipes didn't dissolve when they went to landfill? That's tragic. Or what do you mean you used to put plastic pots into other plastic pots because you thought that was a good refill system? Like things like that. So I think we'll continue to see people innovate. But yeah, I'd love some accountability in a good way.
Yeah, we've got some audience questions because we're almost running out of time. So this one's for Natasja. How does Australia's approach to beauty differ from other major markets like the US and Europe?
Ooh, very topical. I literally just came back from 3 days in London last week where I was talking about this, and then we were in America a month earlier. So very, very good question, whoever that was. It is different. I think at the same time, we have similar consumers, but the way that people approach beauty and like the marketing tactics is different. I feel like in Australia, we are, how do I say this really like in a nice way to not offend the other countries? I feel like we're very ethical, and it's a really good thing. And I feel like we're having conversations earlier than some of the other countries overseas. So when I talk to people in the US, sustainability, it's not it for them, and not yet. Yeah, I think it's very lip service. I think it's going to take longer to get there, which is totally fine. Everyone will get there eventually. I think people in the UK really understand if we're kind of sister countries. They're putting legislation in at the moment to like ban wet wipes, for an example. Brilliant. We're going to see that legislation passed down to Australia too, and there's going to be some really great government legislation and standardizations around what you can and cannot flush, which is amazing for things like wipes as an example. But I think it is different. It's not the same. So when you start to explore new market growth, which we are at the moment, so actually fun fact, 50% of our sales do come from the US, and half our social following comes from the US.
So maybe they do care about sustainability.
Well, you would think that, but then we've surveyed them and they're actually just here for the skin benefits, which no problem. That's fine. All
We'll
good.
get you in on that.
Yeah, well, I'm good with that too, by the way.
Yeah.
But it is, when we're talking to them and when we're talking to them even from a marketing perspective, it is different. But ultimately, I think we'll all end up getting there.
Yeah, however we get there.
However we get there.
I've got a clock that's counting down, so we are done. Ladies, thank you so much for your time today. That was so insightful. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.